think it's working. Ladies and gentlemen, members and friends, hello, everyone. Hello, everyone.
Good evening, everyone.
Indeed, this is exciting. Lovers Libations, Feb virtual tasting. We've had some technical hiccups from a multitude of reasons tonight. So some of the presentation that you see on the other screen might be a little bit, you might be able to see a bit of a border on that or something this time. There's reasons behind that I won't bore you with, but instead we'll talk a bit about whiskey. Andrew and I will talk a bit about whiskey, talk about each of these distilleries that we're touching on tonight, that we're going over, and go from there. What do you reckon, Andrew?
That sounds a great idea. Lovers Libations. Of course, this was all originally teamed up with the monthly theme of Valentine's Day, and Matt, how appropriate that you and I seem to couple together for this wonderful occasion. It's I do remember my wife asking some time ago when you and I were working very much hand in hand that I seem to be spending more nights talking to you than I was to her. So it's,
well, it's Valentine's Day, so and love you to bits, Andrew. So why not? Let's have a lovers libation.
You've got a cheeky cleansing ale there, I can see.
It's a bit warm, so yeah, I'm going with a cleansing ale to start with. MB and AD at the same time. Fancy, welcome, gents. Thank you. Evening from a few different people dropping in. Dov Burns, Betty Petrie, good to see you all. This tasting did sell out, so there's going to be a few joining us in the stream tonight. Of course, there'll be those who watch it later as well. But it's a chance for us to catch up and talk a bit about each whiskey. Now, as you may have seen in the email we sent around midday today to all the attendees, we encourage you to pour your whiskeys a bit ahead of time to allow for it to open up and to work and to make sure that the aromas have a chance to work their magic and you're not just tasting straight out of the sample bottles. I think that's a good idea. That's mostly a good idea. But a few little quick things before we kick off. This is, of course, like I said, the Outturn. This is from Feb Outturn, which is all about the theme of love and the love of whiskey and the love of enjoyment of whiskey. There it is, Dram Love, the Feb Outturn cover. I will take this opportunity now to preview what's coming up. You'll see it later this week, of course, ahead of the first Friday of March, the March Outturn cover. But before I do, there's so many cool events coming up at the Society that aren't just virtual events. Of course, they're all available on the website at the moment, upcoming events. Andrew, I think you got two in the barrel coming up.
Exactly right. March 10th, we have a whiskey event we're calling Whiskey 101 and 102 and 103. It'll be an absolutely fantastic night. Probably a bit more technical and educational than we normally go into. Certainly, if you're newer to the Society, it would be a great one to come along to. But we're going to share with you a couple of little secrets that the industry doesn't want you to know. So great little insights there. Come along to that. And then on April 26th, the man is back. Franz Schurer, we're doing another wonderful whiskey dinner, as only Franz can do. 1 + 1 = 3 at the amazing Bibo restaurant, which is Portuguese, in Double Bay in Sydney. That's very limited. Only got 40 seats for that. We're in the private dining room. So if you are living in Sydney, you like whiskey and you love food, and you imagine those two things go together better than you've ever experienced before, that is a fantastic night to get along to.
Indeed. They're all available. Those events, the two Sydney ones and a whole bunch of other ones coming up around the country, are available on the Society website now. Tickets are up for those. There's the cover upcoming for the March Outturn, beautifully different. We've worked hard on this issue. We're really happy to have this one coming up real soon. So this is the first time you've seen the cover, and we're really excited to share that with you in the coming days. However, just some news from around the place of what's been happening at the Society before we launch into our virtual. If you want to pour that 112.99 whilst you're waiting and let that sit in the glass, but there is the menus over at Whiskey and Ailment. And as of today, it's had a bit of an update. So you can actually catch the Outturn within the whiskey menu itself. It's sort of a condensed version of Outturn that you can spot on the inside of their menus. So there they are. There's all the casks on offer. Outturn, and you can just pick and you can see the dram price as soon as you open it. So no needing to flick through the Outturn, finding all the casks amongst all the content each month when you arrive. And you can also use it as a tasting mat if you'd like. We used to do with the big fold-out Outturns. I love that bit of feedback we had from Whiskey and Helmet, was that members used to love when we used to do the fold-out Outturn, and it was sort of like 16 by 16 spin around massive sheet of paper, and people used to place it on the bar and put a glass on top of each whiskey and use it as like a tasting board for each whiskey. And now you can do that again with their new menus, which is really exciting. So there, and then I want to show this photo as well. There's actually I should bring it up in its full glory, so we can catch Andrew in that photo as well. There's Andrew hosting literally just what was it, last week, week before, last week at the Kelvin Club in Melbourne, hosting his tour of Speyside, Grand Tour of Speyside, which is hopefully roving around soon as well. And that is, it's been great to have you here after an 8-year absence, I should say.
I've got to say, it was a fun night. Fantastic it was just a great evening, but great to see so many Melbourne members. Fantastic room there, wonderful room for events, and it was a lot of fun. And yes, the plan is to take the Grand Tour of Speyside on the road and to bring it to other cities. We will be doing that. We started the process way back in 2020 in Sydney, and then COVID came along and derailed us a little bit. So look out for that when you get notification about when that tasting comes to your town.
Indeed. Well, the other bit of news is, of course, I'm going to again call Alex Moores the luckiest bastard alive.
Yes.
There he is at the vaults. That photo was taken 2 days ago, where he's been busy picking out our next gathering cask, along with every other international branch, really. Some of the bigger international branches there, all picking out some casks. And it looks like a few of the commenters on that photo were, it looks like Japan brought an entourage, and I think they did, because there was like 4 or 5 of them there. But then again, they've been in lockdown much longer than the rest of us, so I think they deserve it. All right.
I'm still a bit annoyed that Morsey's name came out of the hat and not yours or mine, but anyway, yeah.
What a rigged hat.
It was.
Great to see all these comments coming through. Good to see everyone here. And Brisbane Whiskey Scene saying, I've got my tickets to the Brisbane event. Mackerel or then Coastal. Ooh, good. There's some good guesses going on with that cover. Yeah, indeed. And Awesome AD will be all over he's talking about your Grand Tour of Speyside if it gets to Perth. I hope it will. So how about
I think that's Dave Cook there. So Dave, I look forward to having a dram with you.
Good to see you, Dave. 112.99 feels like a caress. So we're starting with a sweet, fruity, and mellow. Something really, something sweet, fruity, mellow.
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but you're in for a good tasting when the first cab off the rank is an 18-year-old.
Yeah, absolutely. With a bit of time, this one in a first fill Sauternes barrique. Andrew, what is a barrique?
We had that question at the Melbourne event just the other day. It was I don't know. You can simplify it and say it's just French for barrel, can't you? Is that oversimplifying things?
It's a fancy French word for barrel. For barrel. Yeah. The other note I'd make with barrique is that it's almost usually French oak.
Yeah.
Or
and
European.
something I think everyone sort of takes for granted or assumes, but I don't think I've actually read it in print to see it confirmed for my own peace of mind. But when we say French oak, is that limousine oak, or is limousine oak different to what is commonly accepted as French oak?
I think limousine oak is different.
Okay.
French oak it has a much wider definition. Be like saying like ex-cognac cask is, not all French oak is ex-cognac casks either, or sorry, in oak, but yes. Just this 18-year-old whiskey we're starting with has a proof of 51.4%. It's just that lovely low 50s sweet whiskey to start us off. It's 18 years in the next maturation in first fill ex Sauternes. So I'd love to see in the comments anyone here who's actually a fan of Sauternes, the wine itself. It's a very sweet wine. It's not quite as like sticky as say a Botrytis, but it's very it's a very sweet, lovely wine. And aged Sauternes can be a marvelous thing.
I think there's a mutual friend of ours, Matt, who's a big fan of that particular style of wine and goes in at the big end and the heavy end of the scale.
Yeah,
and I was privileged enough to try a glass or two when he was shouting the bottle once, and it is amazing stuff, I have to say.
Yeah. Question coming in. I can't see the name on this one. Sorry, folks. Does barrique have a size designation like Hodgkin's Head or Butt? considering the designation is kind of like a French barrel, then yes, usually 200 liters. But the word barrel, I mean, it comes from obviously the American barrels of being 200. A lot of them are 220 now, though. You see a lot of 220 liter barrels, so it does move around a bit, but generally smaller than a hoggy.
It is interesting. A lot of, you look at a lot of casks. I'm using the word cask as opposed to barrel in the wine industry. Are typically 250, 300 liters. But I did have the privilege of going through the warehouses at Auchentoshan many years ago, and they had a section that was completely cordoned off for French barrique maturation, and the casks were about the same, if not slightly smaller than the 200 liter American oak ex-bourbon barrels that were on the other side of the aisle. So yeah, tip about the, I think just on the basis of what I saw at Auchentoshan, and they were barriques that came straight in. You could actually see still the French language, the writing on the head of the cask there. So I think we'll assume they're around 200 liters.
A question I was asked ages ago was about the difference between a whiskey and wine barrel in construction, and the answer to that is the wine barrels are lovingly constructed. That's true. You look at a wine barrel; they're often perfectly built. They've got the extra hood, head gauze area. They've got the extra hoops. They're just lovingly constructed. But the whiskey barrels in comparison, are often a bit more sort of how fast can a Cooper pump this out sort of vibe.
I think it's interesting though. Like a wine barrel will be used many, many times in the space of, it'll age something for 6, 12 months or whatever, and then get refilled again. It's very different to the whiskey cask that gets filled and put away for 20 years and forgotten about. So
you'd almost think it should be around the other way then.
Yeah, you do, don't you? Yeah. How good is this?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I get that off all 112s, 135s, 112s to some extent. I get that there's almost a yeasty funk to some of their spirit. There's a yeasty funk to it. It's almost like they've used an interesting yeast bill in some of these whiskeys, which is, I get that with this one as well. And maybe it's augmented by the Outturn finish. I'm not sure.
It's interesting. I mean, this distillery, as we know, is just crazy with the different stills and configurations that they do there. And I'm actually I'm probably mixing my numbers up here, but 112, that's the one using the stainless? No, it can't be the stainless steel. It's the one with the old pot stills with the rectifying column heads. Is that the one?
Pot stills with rectifying column.
Yeah.
And 135 swan neck traditional.
Yeah.
122 is a combination wash and spirit, and then but we also see sometimes at the society both unpeated and peated expressions of all three of those codes.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And the one that they make in the stainless steel is now got to be classified as a grain whiskey now. Is that right? I think the SWA came in and smacked them on the wrist and said, you've got to call that a grain whiskey.
Yeah. So you can still find sometimes here and there, you see bottlings of, I'm not going to say the distillery name, but I can say the spirit type. You can find bottles of what they sometimes label as old Rosdu, which was a single malt then, but now it's not.
Yeah.
So now it's a grain, which which is why it was such a late code for the society. In fact, it's the most recent grain code, G15.
Yeah. But I think those stills, the pot stills with the rectifying heads, you are going to get a different spirit. And, you talk about that funk that you get in some 112s. There you go.
Yeah. Pardon me. That's fun. That's a fun whiskey. I get sort of like an apple cider note as well, which could be the Guinness turns.
There's definitely an apple orchard note there. I think you touched on it earlier. You talked about the strength being down at 51%. It just sings at this strength, doesn't it?
So nice.
And there are some drams you have at 50%, and certainly once your palates become a bit jaded to low ABVs as ours can be, and you look for that higher strength, that a higher bit of zing.
Yeah.
No desire for this. I imagine at 55, this would probably not be hitting its straps as well. I think it's at 51, it's just right.
By showing your comment on screen there, Dave, then yes, you have fixed your name. Well done. I think it's just a permissions thing. Yeah, there we go. And they've got that cool little on-site cooperage there as well, as some distilleries do.
For those who may not appreciate the comment there, bear in mind that this distillery also has a grain distillery on the same site, so they do their own blended whiskies in house. They've got the malt distillery on one side, cross over to the hall to the other, and you've got their grain distillery, and then they therefore can make a blend in house. And you don't hear the term very often, but it's literally a single blend as opposed to a single malt.
Are they allowed to use single blend on it?
I don't think the term is an officially acknowledged term by the SWA, but no. Those of us who are nerdy enough about it use the term.
I remember tasting it at some point. I think I used it as a welcome dram somewhere, and it was something like $46 a bottle somewhere. And it was I've had worse, not by a huge margin, but it definitely met the price point. Let's put it that way.
Matt, it's in the context of the conversation. I wish to add something to this, but you're going to have to excuse me while I disappear from camera for 30 seconds and come back. But
That's okay.
I'll be back with something that will add to the conversation here.
In the meantime, I'll just show a couple of photos that I'll just scroll past kind of quickly for those tuning along. Like I said, there's some of the photos coming from the on-site cooperage, and that's in the background there. You can see Kai and Ewan and Michael Henry on the left to right there. So Kai and Ewan are on our team at the society. They both work in the spirits team. They both run the spirits team. And then the guy with the dark hair talking to them is Michael Henry, the head blender for this distillery, which at this point, if you can't work out which distillery it is, but they have an amazing laboratory on site as well, where you get to taste through all their different spirits. It's like 13 different new makes that they make on site. Everything from, peated to unpeated expressions, different combinations, and all the expressions which they use different phrases like Glenn Douglas for and Inchmurrin for and everything like that. And then they also, as Andrew said, they make their own blending on site, which is something quite awesome. Andrew's back. I can stop ad-libbing, but
look, very interesting point and just relevant to this distillery. But I thought you might.
There it is. There's the old. Okay, I'm just going to make into your.
That's really annoying. My camera is choosing to focus on me and not the text. There we go. Come on, focus.
Put it in front of your face for a second. Put it in front of your face, and forward. And we're pretty close.
It's just not working, is it? Anyway, so it looks like this. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Single malt. That is really annoying that the text won't focus there. 40%. Old Rose. This is a 5-year-old. There you go. 5-year-old.
Yeah.
And this would be circa probably acquired 2001, 2002 would be my guess.
Yeah, very cool. Someone said some here, a nice long sticky finish, like a fruity syrup. Yep. And thankfully, yes, Dave Cook has very thankfully done what I mean to do every time someone complains about this. If you go to the restream.io and sign in using Facebook, it will fix your name on the stream. You basically need to give Restream, our platform here, permission to see your name. It's all the privacy stuff. I guess, people in Europe probably use this software. Anyway, so shall we move on to whiskey number 2, though, as we've been having a chat about this one for a while? Pour yourself a dram of 46.131. Okay.
You know what else I thought was interesting about our whiskies tonight, and we've just started with an 18-year-old. But we've got 5 whiskies tonight. 3 of them are distilleries that you really don't encounter all that often.
Yeah.
And that's even through the society, let alone through regular commercial expressions. Certainly, this one that we're about to try, you've got to go a long way to find a commercial OB version of this, an official bottling. There was always the flora and fauna. I don't think I've seen any expressions outside that flora and fauna bottling myself.
I don't think we have. Oh, hold on a second. There's that newish range over the last couple of years that have been the Ballantines of this, and then they've done single malts but using the Ballantines brand, and I think this was one of them.
This is I thought this distillery was Diageo.
Oh, it is too. Am I getting my numbers mixed up there? Maybe. Yeah.
Look, in any event, I'm going to assume that most people haven't tried much of this particular distillery. And on that basis, it's got a reputation for making lovely, soft, quite fruity spirit. We're in the heart of Speyside, I think, as the name would suggest, Speyside Balsamic. And this is also the distillery that was built first, and then in the 1960s or 70s, Manickmore got tacked on alongside. And I don't need to say this distillery because there you go. It's we've put a picture up on front, so I'm sure you can, just by sheer coincidence, Matt's put up a photo of the same distillery we're tasting. That's incredible. Wow.
I mean, I didn't say it, but there is a sign on the screen.
Yeah.
I just want that to be really clear. But yes, 46 and 131. I have a soft spot for our 46s and 64s because they're so different from each other, but they have such a unique quality. And out of these 46s, I just get such a lovely, like, cereal note, a lovely sort of like earthy note as well. I often get that, like topsoil grassiness.
I'm with you with 64. I think the Society 64s have been stunning. It's got to be one of the most underrated codes and drams out there. And again, a tragedy to most malt drinkers that that particular distillery is not available as a widely available commercial expression. And when the Society comes along and bottles their casks, you should really pounce on them. And you know what else? This is going to sound strange, and I know it makes no sense at all. But anytime I look at a 46 or a 64 and I look at the color, there's just, sorry, I'm holding my glass over here. There's just something wonderfully luminescent about it. I don't know what it is. If you could identify a whiskey by its color, I'd hold it up just to the light and go, oh, I reckon that's Manickmore or this particular one. But there's something about the color of these that just, for me, is quite distinctive. That sounds mad. I know everyone's listening to that thinking, Andrew, you've lost it. But anyway.
Yeah. Oh, dear, oh, dear. I haven't got any, I don't know if I have any water nearby to add to that. Because it is pretty big at 64.
We've jumped up, haven't we? We've jumped up to 64.
It's very obvious straight away. Like, it's obvious. Yeah,
there's some potency. For me, there's not the prickle behind that gives away the strength. It's the weight behind it. It's a big, broad brushstroke of a nose. But again, I reiterate, I'm not getting the prickle that comes with that. So I think it's well behaved. I'm not getting nasty volatiles. And, again, another example of how the industry is changing. Many, many years ago, all casks were filled at 63.5%.
Yeah.
And they went downhill from there. So when we're bottling this at 9 years and at 64.6, this would have been one of the many distilleries in the 2000s that started to go across to increasing their filling strength because they realized it was becoming increasingly expensive to mature water.
I love the discussion about what, I love that. I know it's really nerdy, but I do love the discussion around entry proof. Like, I've heard of distillers filling it 70 and above, 75%, and distillers filling it 40 to 43%.
Yeah.
Everything in between. And every distillery claims they eventually find their sweet spot with what proof to fill casks from the still in. For those playing along at home, it's worth noting that that's not still strength, that's fill strength. And still strength is a proof as it comes off the still. And that's anywhere these days between 68 to 80%. But it's the proof that it goes into the barrel at the beginning of maturation, which is, for a lot of Scottish distilleries, is still 63.5, 63.4%. But a lot of distilleries now are maturing are filling at 70 or as close to 70 as possible.
Dave Cook's just contributed there with a comment about lime burners at 72%. Bit interesting when you look at the Australian situation, of course, because a lot of our distilleries and our climate have the situation where their strength actually goes up as they mature because it's the water that's evaporating in the cask and not necessarily the alcohol. So the Angels have to take a slightly different tack on things.
Dave, are you saying that they fill their casks at 72 or it comes out at 72? At the end point before they bring it down a bit, because I'd love to know, because I didn't know that.
I mean, that suggests an unusually high cut, doesn't it? And it means that they're switching on to faints before they're even getting into the high 60s.
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, right.
Someone says here they had Sully's once at 69%. Yeah, they did exist. They don't make those whiskies anymore at Sullivan's, but a long time ago they used to have a whole bunch of cask strength odd options, and maybe it was one of those pilot casks or something. Phil at 72. Wow. Okay, just as if we're talking Australian for a second, as a point of comparison, like Starwood, I'm going to use Starwood because I know that one off the top of my head. They fill at 55. So even just to put those two in comparison for a second, because you can't really say that Melbourne and Perth are hugely different in climate and humidity. Yeah, I mean there are slight differences, but it's not like comparing Perth to say Elgin. You know, it's like comparing Perth to Melbourne. It's the same continent. Just take from Scotland and pass it on to Australia. Yeah.
If members who've been members for 10 years or more might remember when we had a big influx of rums many years ago, and the rums were being bottled at, well, there was a famous one that came in at 83.5%, and which we brought into the country. We did a couple of tasting events, and tell you, when you're drinking rum at 83%, you learn very quickly where your ABV threshold is.
On that note, Andrew, I remember it was actually a Steps tasting in Sydney where I first tasted that rum, and I was one of your station hosts, and I think I tried like a 15 ml nip of it or something, like a 10-15 mils of it, and I remember tasting it going, wow, that's incredible. It's super clean. It's really easy. It's actually drank really well for that proof,
yes.
Surprisingly. Dangerously so, because I had another 15 mils of it 5 minutes later and then put my hand on the table and went, oh no, that wasn't a good idea. So that was like, it was only 2 15 mil drams, and I think I maybe had a dram in between or something, and it was just sort of like, oh right, yeah, it catches up with you pretty quick, that proof.
Well, we did, sorry, I'm going off topic now, but we had that rum event for the Society in Sydney, and we featured 3 Society rums that were this one at 83.5. We had one in I think it was 76, and there was another one at 72. And then we had 3 other commercial rums. And I just remember waking up the next day feeling $1 million. It was incredible, and quite the opposite of what I was expecting. But yes, we all went home very happy that night.
I bet. We've had a few rum events in Sydney. We've had a few rum events around the country. We're hoping to do some more. We had a great one with Bricks. That was good over in Surrey Hills, the rum distillery, and yeah, it's such an intriguing spirit. But I think if you're starting on rums, you should stay on rums. Let's put it that way. Let's just dive back into this 46.131.
Did you find any water to add, Matt? I've got some here. I'm going to add a little wee dribble.
I'm sure I could find some. I'd have to probably leave the stream for a minute, and you could ad lib. But
we'll take ad libbing in turns.
Yeah.
So look, I've added water to mine, just a splash, and we won't get into the fancy conversation about should the water be tap water or spring water, or should it be cold, tepid, or room temperature, etc. But I'll tell you what, I've added water, and straight away out comes the fruit. This is so much fruitier than it was just a moment ago. And there's some nice, beautiful, almost petrichor notes as well. You know, the cut grass in the rain.
Not uncommon with 46s as well. That sort of petrichor note, that grassy sort of rain smell.
And that's that classic Speyside note, isn't it? When people say, how would you typify or pigeonhole a Speyside whiskey? And grassiness used to be the big word that was thrown around, and certainly in the textbooks in the 1980s.
Yeah.
And on the palate, I added enough water. I suspect I've probably taken mine down to about 52, 53. I added a bit more than I intended to, but it is still singing and shining. Lovely drop.
Whew.
Yeah, wow.
But we've definitely jumped though. As I said, like 64.6%. I get a bit of that sort of like, do you get almost a hint of like candle wax on that?
A little bit. Now that you mention it, yeah.
Maybe just like paraffin, like white wax, paraffin wax or something on that. I like that. Yep. I like that in a whiskey though.
That's a lovely drop. And again, 9 years old, and I'll give members some quick insight. I'm just busy putting together our next shipment that's going to be making its way to Australia, and we have a fair bit of 9-year-old stock on it. And actually, we've got a fair bit of 9-year-old stock in our warehouse in Australia at the moment. And I'm just increasingly impressed and amazed at how good these 9-year-old whiskies are. And it's almost like our colleagues in Scotland made deliberate decisions to not let them get to double digits, to chop them off before they got to 10. But you taste them and you think it was the right decision. They're just shining. And I think it's really a reflection on just how much better the distilleries have got at their wood management, at sourcing first fill casks, and certainly that vibe or that accepted wisdom that existed in the industry when I first entered it, that whiskey had to be 10 to 12 years old before you'd even think about enjoying it. Those days are just so far behind us, and the distilleries have got better and better at bringing more matured and better quality stock to market at these younger ages.
And a lot of that, as we touched on, I think on our last virtual, comes down to wood policy. Comes down to wood management, comes down to reinvigoration and revitalization of good wood, and not letting it go to waste. And so I think that's really exciting. It's an exciting time for the trade. And years ago it would have been considered a different game, but it's very exciting.
Dave, I can see your question there. No, there's not a 51 on the next shipment, but you never have to wait too long. They turn up eventually.
Yeah, we've had some cracking 51s over the years, but that's indeed cool.
Actually, a bit of a shame, really, if you think about it. We've got St. Patrick's Day coming up next month.
Timing,
yes.
Cool. Well, I'll just fly past these. I think we might look at our next whiskey.
And again, a distillery. Okay, you can find this in Australia. Most good.
Uncommonly, I should say. It's not easy to find. I wouldn't say this is easy to find in Australia.
It's not easy, but you can find it. The better stockists will have at least something flying around. But look, it's a small distillery. Doesn't have a huge outturn, and then how much finds its way to Australia is another matter. But we've jumped up into the Highlands now. A lot of you would be familiar with or have heard of the distillery Glenmorangie. This distillery is not a million miles away. It's just a bit down the road.
This particular expression, 70.45 flambéed in rum, I just want to make one thing really clear to everyone. There's no rum maturation involved with this. I've been asked that twice about this release. Was there secondary maturation in a rum cask that's not been printed for some reason? The second thing I want to touch on as well, in your tasting menus, there is an error. I'm just going to make that really clear right now. Oh, where's my camera? There it is. It is a 13-year-old juicy oak and vanilla, not an 18-year-old lowland whiskey. Andrew is right. It's a Highland whiskey. That is purely just a typo in the menu. We do apologize. The price and everything else is correct. The image is wrong, but it's 70.45. It's flambéed in rum. It's a juicy oak and vanilla. Now, when I first tasted this release, this was actually featured at a Melbourne tasting, I think just in January. I tasted it and went, oh, okay, I like that, but I'm not really, wasn't that into it to begin with, if I'm being honest. And then I came back around to it. There was 20 mils left in the bottom of a bottle. And I came back around to it like 3 weeks later. So maybe even just like last week or something. And it was phenomenal. And I'm a huge fan of this release. I'm a huge fan of this distillery. I think they produce some of the most fascinatingly interesting, old school, waxy, characterful malts in Scotland. And I'm a huge fan of this distillery.
I think for my money, this distillery features the ugliest stills in Scotland. Not particularly attractive, these stills.
But one of those beautiful landscapes of any distillery.
Oh, the landscape is stunning, and the distillery is stunning. And I have to say, if you ever travel far enough north to get up to this distillery, they do really good tours there. Their visitor centre is fantastic. And you see when you get there that everything has been shoehorned into the space. It's like the building existed first, and then they found the largest still that could possibly fit into the room and still give room for one guy to squeeze around.
a bit like Strathyler or something. One of those.
Yeah, very similar. But the still house is mad, and you don't see a lot of photos of the stills because it's really hard to take a photo. It's it's such a cramped space. And for those who are vaguely interested in prehistoric history and Scotland's history and the Picts, this area of Scotland is fantastic for its Neolithic history. And there's standing stones, old burial tombs, Pictish stones that just stand in the middle of a paddock. This is one particular area of Scotland where you'll find a lot of that stuff, and you actually drive past a fair bit of it on your way to this distillery.
Mm.
Do you remember you talked earlier, Matt, about that last expression you had of this, where you went back to the last 20 mil and it had changed? Do you remember we did a tasting that focused entirely on this distillery? It was an evening with Distillery 70. And our colleague Milne co-hosted that night. Yeah. And do you remember on the night, there was almost a recurring theme of people taking the lid off, smelling it, this is really great, and then returning to it afterwards, half an hour later, and everyone going, oh, every whiskey just grew into another dimension.
Yeah, this is one of those for me as well. It was very bright when I first opened the bottle, but as a couple of weeks passed, and there was not much left, it was just phenomenal. I can't get over that. It's like dark chocolate and orange oil sort of.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that dark chocolate. It's
like Nutella note as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
you're getting a nuttiness, a hazelnut note to it.
Hazelnut, Nutella note, yeah. I've added a bit of water to mine, and I did find some water.
Yep. I agree. On the nose, there's roasted hazelnuts galore.
Mm.
And
lovely.
Now that I'm going looking for it, pecans as well.
Mm. Pecan pie. Ooh.
Ooh, yes, please.
Mm. Wow. I'd tread carefully with the water on this one, folks. It's not 58.2 as the menu incorrectly says. It's 56.2. Not too far away. But a drop helps it out, but you don't want to flood it.
There's a comment that's just popped up by Dov, and he's used the abbreviation JOV. You might need to educate me. I'm not quite sure what that is.
I'm not a big Juicy Oak and Vanilla fan, but this is
right, flavor profile. There you go.
Flavor profile. Yep. By the way, and this is on a call out. This is a shout out to our American ambassador Scott Brunel, who actually abbreviates the deep, rich, and dried fruits in his spoken of it, and he calls it DIRDF, the DIRDF profile. And I'm like, wow, that's an abbreviation. I thought Australians abbreviated everything, but it turns out Americans do too.
I was not aware we'd reached the point where we were abbreviating our flavor profiles. I'm sorry, our FPs.
Well, we've got Dov and Jov. Dov's not a big Jov fan, he says, and so we've got DIRDF. How do you abbreviate peated?
I don't know, but I'm looking forward to a P later on.
Wow. It's my birthday on St. Pat's Day. Send me bottle. It's not presumptuous at all. It's great. Yeah. And Peter shall be renamed to. Yep, good.
Dion, happy birthday for next month, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good to have you along, Dion.
Lovely.
That's there's an expression that a few people like to use in the whiskey game. I'm talking, enthusiasts and drinkers and plenty of members. And there's one guy, Matt, who we're both acquainted with, who uses this phrase all the time. And I think he would refer to this as a session dram. And I'm inclined to agree. You could have a very long session with this whiskey, and I don't think you'd ever get bored with it. It's just a lovely drop. It's not exploding with complexity, but for the profile and the spectrum that it offers, it's really tasty and enjoyable, and you could just keep knocking this back.
Yeah, it's an easy drinker. What's the other one I heard in that same realm, Andrew? Is it's a footy dram.
A footy dram. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
obviously, that's an Aussie rules expression because, good dram would last you the 2.5 hours of that game. I think, a 90-minute rugby league or soccer game, no good. But,
but we need to start bringing back the old drinking tip in Outturn and say, what perfect for AFL games, not good for rugby union.
I'd forgotten the drinking tips. Oh, God, that's going back a bit. Yeah.
Tip,
wow.
Yeah. For members who've been around longer, a while, remember that we used to have a tasting note and a drinking tip beneath the tasting note that was the sort of the where and when to enjoy this.
Yeah.
One for lazy Sunday afternoons, or one for a game of footy, or anyway, it was good.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a fun whiskey. I'm a huge fan of the 70s. It's at like we had 70.40. The Eloquent Silence at 30-year-old was probably in my top 3 of like 2019. And then we had recently, and it should also be noted that the cask just before this one, 70.44, Loom of Time, was the 3rd highest rated whiskey to pass through the bar at Whiskey and Almond all of last year.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
ridiculous. Like they rated that was a 31-year-old, so we're talking some serious territory here. And that was that was one their third highest of the whole year, which is huge praise from a bar that sees 20-25 new whiskeys a week.
Yeah. It was great. As we touched on at the start, I was down in Melbourne just last week, and I hadn't been to Whiskey and Almond since 2017, I think. And it was fantastic. What a place!
What a bar!
What a bar!
Yeah. What an atmosphere! What a team! Everything is in there. It's great.
And it was fascinating because it had changed since I was last there in terms of just the society's presence, and to go in and just see that huge long row of green bottles on the front row of the back bar, and then Outturn scattered around the place, and other society bottlings up, and then archive stuff as well. It was just amazing.
Andrew, can you see who's written that comment?
I can. I think that was Joshua. Yeah, Josh Werdiger.
Oh, Josh, mate, that was hard agree. Yeah, top 5 of all time for me. Maybe not top 5 of all time. I don't like all time lists because they're always changing. But it was in the top 3 of last year for sure for me as well. It's one of those. It's a very versatile spirit though. I almost said the name of the distillery. It's a very versatile Highland distillery. It works at a young age. It works at an old age. I think it excels at older ages. But even this younger one is just so much fun.
Didn't someone start a thread or a chat on our Facebook group not too long ago about favorite society bottlings of all time?
Yeah.
I
think that was actually Martin Eber who started that one, or no, he commented on it. There was someone on there who commented on that. But also, it is worth noting at this point in the tasting, our 3 out of 5 in, that ready, you can scan that. Look at that. You can grab the virtual casks that we're all tasting tonight. Log in, of course, via your QR code there if you want. Otherwise, if you're more desktop inclined, you can just go to snws.com.au/shop. All 5 of these casks that were on taste, 3 of these are already on the site. 2 of these are newcomers, and they'll be available as of right now. So don't miss out on these.
Dave, I can see your comment there. I think that's what they call a first world problem. So.
Yeah, that is a first world problem. Yeah, I can't see where the vault samples we've done in the past do come in these little black glass to be in line with the sort of the darker theme of the vaults boxes. And speaking of which, as people are already pouring into that one, I think we might move along. 35.305. Oh, so Oloroso. This is cool. First of all, can we just take a moment to appreciate the global outturn of this release? 115 bottles ever came out of this cask. This is a tiny release. This is a low outturn release. And it was distilled 26th September 1988. Now, think about, I love asking this question whenever we get to some really old whiskies. What were you doing on the 26th of September, or at least maybe September 1988?
I remember thinking, gosh, Matt Bailey's 4 years old this year.
Wow. And I remember thinking, gosh, that mate of mine, Andrew, is already in high school. How the hell did you do that? Notice how I didn't say your age just then.
Thank you. You're very kind.
You know what? That's called decorum, Andrew. That's called decorum.
I'll learn to get some one day. Yeah.
No, I don't mind. 35.305 Oso Oloroso with an exclamation point. 115 bottles worldwide. And 1988, and still 56.9% held up after that time. We've had a lot of 35s through. Andrew well knows that 35 is one of my favorite codes. I think this is a hugely underrated distillery. I think the versatility of their spirit in so many different types of wood, in so many different types of finishes, is one of the most exciting journeys in flavor you can have. And we have seen over the years at the Society, which has just been so exciting.
Yeah,
but this is just so delicate and nuanced, and
it's an exercise for another day, and I'd have to go through all my spreadsheets and go through it. But we have been privileged to have some amazing whiskies over the years, and I'm talking over the 20 years of the Australian branch. And we're an amazing range of whiskies that have been over 30 years old. And it is amazing how much Distillery 35 features in that lineup, not because we've just been able to get a good run of old casks from that distillery. What I'm getting at is just how good they've been, how amazingly stunning that they are,
and diverse. Like I remember some of that there was a night, I almost said the name. It was a night I hosted, which Andrew, you must have been there. It was like 2017 or something. I hosted a night featuring this distillery, and it was I think I did 6 different Society 35s. And there was everything from a 8-year-old first fill bourbon to a 28-year-old toasted oak on that night, and everything in between. And there was a designer cask, and there was a sherry cask, and there was an ex-bourbon, and there was an ex-Outturns or something. So much fun. But I'm just gonna quickly reel off some of these amazing comments. One of the last whiskeys I'll try that is older than me. What were you doing in 1988? I was in Baghdad. That's cool. That's an interesting story in itself. Dave says he was in year 11, grade 10.
Dion, you and I must be about the same vintage. I was in year 10 that year as well.
He reveals. I just said high school twin before, but there we go. I was 25 in 88, and Australia got 130 allocation. There's a reason for that. There's 2 reasons to that. One is Andrew looks after our orders very well, and second reason is the team in the UK know how much we love our 35s and how much the members love it. MB was 4 years old. Yes, thank you, Andrew. That was good. Yep. And I'm ashamed to say that in year 10, my first scotch was Black Douglas. Yuck. Hey, look, we all start somewhere. And there's some very bad blends out there, some very good ones as well. But I got to say, that's definitely on the former.
I never appreciated this. I learned this many years after I'd moved away, because I was also a Black Douglas drinker in my early days at uni. But I understood, someone told me that Black Douglas was actually made specifically for the Australian market. It was a blend put together by Richard Patterson, of all people, because it came out of the White and Mackay stable, and it was made for the Australian market.
There you go. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Liquid cherry ripe. Yeah, that's a cool tasting note for this one. It's not. I think I wrote about this in Outturn a bit. It's not your straight up like you know how some sherried whiskeys can be, and some bourbon whiskeys, but some sherried whiskeys can be monosyllabic. It's like that's a sherry bomb. The end of discussion. There's not much to talk about with it. Whereas this one has just this lovely nuance. Yeah, this is cool. But just have a look at the tasting notes on this. After 30 years in an ex-bourbon hoggy, we transferred this whiskey into a second fill Oloroso. So it's not a full even a maturation, and it's not a first fill either, which previously matured whiskey from cask 10.196. So an Isla whiskey that was previously in that cask. So there's
how much transparency can you get?
Yeah, I know. It's ridiculous, isn't it? It's so good. Betty, I'm glad to hear you're enjoying that. So beautiful, so creamy. Yeah, it is creamy, isn't it? It's
creamy is a great word. Actually, you beat me to the punch, but I was just going to comment. The mouthfeel on this is extraordinary. You know, something this old has no right to be this unctuous and oily and creamy and thick in the mouth.
Also, I'm just going to do a shout out to you and Campbell, because honestly, if you're at the warehouse, say, and you're looking at this 30-year-old ex-bourbon 35, and then you say, oh yeah, we should put this for extra couple of years in this X cask on top of that 30-year maturation, that's balls of steel material right there. That's just like, you're taking a 30-year-old whiskey and just being like, oh yeah, it could do something else. It could do something else. Oh wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
That very, very good call. And again, getting back to the comments or the conversation about ABV for this age, and considering the 2 casks because it's been slapped in, to come out at 56.9 is quite remarkable.
Works well at that proof. I'm not inclined to add water to this one.
No, not. Why would you? It's got such a lovely creamy mouthfeel. I would hate to dilute that.
Yeah, that's lovely. Oh.
And I'll tell you what's interesting about this also is, yes, there's sherry influence, but for me personally, I wouldn't describe this as a sherry dram. The sherry cask that it's been in for a small amount of its time, a second fill at that, has certainly shaped it. It's sent it off on another direction where you then get that spice, that slight dryness and the dried fruit notes. They're there, but they're adding to the complexity and the diversity of the spectrum rather than defining it or dominating it.
Yeah, it's become part of the story rather than
being the story.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, I could just nose that all night. Can we just skip the 5th whiskey? Sorry, I mean that I could just nose that one all night.
I think also, and Matt, you get credit for this because you put together our menu tonight, not myself. But I think it's always good to have a Vaults collection thrown into these virtuals. Let's be honest, they carry high price tags. Not everyone can shell out for these, and so for the chance to try it by the dram, just makes some of these a bit more affordable and approachable.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it makes sense I love throwing in something like a VC, because like a Vaults collection, because you just get a chance to actually taste these. It makes them accessible. You can say, because this pack was $79, which is a steal, to taste 5 times 30 ml and have us present this is
and let's be honest, if you went to a good whiskey bar that had this available by the dram, you'd be paying $75 just for a dram of it. Probably more.
Probably more. Yeah. Probably 85, 90. I was going to guess, but yeah. Yeah. Wow.
That's turning my head in, Josh. I can't quite. I can't combine those letters.
VC Dirtif. And Dave says, I'll never complain about a random Vaults collection. No, neither will I.
I put it to you, Mr. Cook, that this isn't very random. I think when Matt Bailey's choosing the menu and there's a 35 available.
Yeah, I was just excited to taste this. This is something,
It's like if I'm organising something, you can guarantee there'll probably be a distillery number 1 in the mix. That's generally how it works out. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm with you, and I could drink all this all night as well. But I think what would actually be nice, and I don't know if folks can see this, but I'm going to leave a little bit of my glass there. And I'm looking forward to moving on to the next one. And I'm going to come back and just see where that one goes to, because, there used to be that old rule of thumb that you'd pour a dram and let it sit 1 minute for every year it had in the cask. So if we were to follow that old rule of thumb, then we should let this sit for half an hour and then come back to it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Shall we? Well, do you want to pour the next whiskey then and see how we go along with this? Considering going halves with someone with a bottle on someone, I've done that with an R13. I remember you getting that R13, Dave, and there's some pretty special rums, those R13s. They come along once every blue moon, and yeah, very cool to see. But I think we might move on. Actually, I did have some photos of this for the 35, which I love showing photos of. There it is with the Vaults collection box. One of my favorite experiences of Distillery 35 was a few years ago when I got to visit, and there's Graham, who's since moved on to Dingle. But every other distillery that day that we visited, or in that last few days at least, they were all sort of like, they wouldn't open the spirit safe. And if they did, they'd sort of just like quickly open and say, oh, that's what it is, and then close it again. Whereas Graham, I didn't get the photo of him doing every part of it, but there he is opening the spirit safe, and he propped it up with this broken pencil that was sitting next to the safe. And he said, oh, have a taste of the new make. And I said, how? And he goes, well, get in there. And so he just cups his hands under the cut point and grabs a cupped handful of new make and goes, yep, that's have a taste. And I said, oh my God, okay. Is this okay? Is this allowed? He was like, are you the tax man? Doesn't matter, just do it. all right. So cupping new make out of the spirit safe at the distillery was quite an experience. And I'll just press through these so we can get to our 53. And rock and roll 53-401 Oyster Karate.
I just before we get there, Matt, I had exactly that same experience at a distillery in Campbelltown, so that narrows it down. I'm sure you can decide, but yeah, that experience was amazing. But the reason why they got me to do it was not to cup it and taste it, but to feel the oiliness of it. So our hands were saturated. It was coming out at X many liters per second. And just to then rub your hands and just feel, it was like glycerine. The oiliness of it was extraordinary. And then the smell was amazing. And I won't lie, the taste was pretty spectacular too. But when people say that, you're involved with the production and making of a whiskey and it's got your fingerprints on it, I'm looking forward to that distillery in about another 7 years' time when it hits 12 years old, because that will have my handprints all over it.
It almost encourages that discussion of were there any times in the last 2 or 3 years where you walked into some shopping center or somewhere or an office and you hit the hand sanitizer and you did this and you went, oh, well, actually it smells quite nice. I might have to lick my hand after that one. Is it? Right, it smells a bit Glen Scotia-ish, but
well, I've still got hand sanitizer that was made by Archie Rose Distillery. So yeah, I get that a fair bit actually.
I haven't replaced it with the Archie Rose lube yet. No. Okay. I'm not even joking, folks. They've made a lube anyway. Okay, so that wasn't like some sort of crude joke. Archie Rose are actually literally making lube. So shall we move on to 53?
We've been doing live streams for 3 years, and the word lube finally came into the lexicon. Okay.
If it came 3 years ago, I would have shaken my head and gone, "Oh my God, what does this become?" All right, 53-401, third time lucky. Let's pour a bit of this one. I didn't pre-pour this one because I was worried about what the aroma would do to that previous one.
Look, let's get some essential preliminaries out of the way. Distillery 53, generally speaking, when it comes from the society, always a winner. 10 years old, you're under a winner. Refill bourbon hogshead for this particular distillery, winner. Bottled at 57.4%, winner. Nosing it, winner. This is where it's at. Oh my goodness.
I'm not going to put that next comment on screen.
Yeah,
has a lovely fruitiness to it. I agree. And these 53s are Mr. Consistent. They are so good. And I think if you snooze on these, if you're a peated whiskey fan, you're missing out big time. These are great. Oh, it is wonderful. Dov, I agree with you. It's wonderful. It's vibrant, but it's settled at the same time. It's a bit herbal, this one, over some others, which are often a bit more sort of citric for me.
Look, I've just leapt ahead and tasted, and I have to say, wow, it is so spectacular. I find it amusing that when people say, "Oh, what's your favorite Islay distillery?" and people jump for I'll say it, the big names, the sexy names. Oh, I love Ardbeg, and I love Lagavulin, and I love Lafroig, and Bemore's got its legion of fans. And this poor distillery, by virtue of who it is and what it is, often gets left behind. But how often do we get to a 53, specifically a Society 53, and just go, this is up there with the best?
Yeah.
It's just incredible how often that happens.
Just as a point of reference for those playing along in terms of the quality and consistency of these 53s we've been getting through, there was a tasting that I co-hosted, is the best way I can put it, in the back room of the Oak Barrel in Sydney about 3 years ago, where there was, I think it was 20 different expressions from this distillery being opened on the same day. And only 2 of those 20 were Society 53s. But one of those came out in a blind lineup as the pick of the day. And there were I think it was a 9 or 10-year-old as well. 9 or 10-year-old like this one, a 53, that even trumped some of the 22, 25-year-old expressions that day. And in a blind lineup, no kidding. And it had nothing to do with me being there or co-hosting it or anything like that. It was just that's the lineup, and people loved it. And it was there were core range, there were other bottlers, but this was the one that just stood out head and shoulders above the rest. So there's all of these casks. People are wondering if this one's available. Yes, this has just recently come out. It's all available, and I'm just going to show this once more on screen. Ready? There you go. Grab your virtual casks. Scan that code with your phone. Actually, I didn't even test if that QR works. But Andrew and I are doing it live on screen right now.
I'm placing an order as we speak.
Good. Let's see if this works. Come on. There we go. Look at that. Takes you straight to the casks. No, it doesn't. Takes you to the homepage. Anyway, go to the shop. We'll get better at this next time, I promise. This is the first time using QRs, live QRs. But anyway, this is takes you straight to the shop. Almost. It works. Takes you to the shop anyway. But yeah, grab one of those, log in. I'm glad to see people were using it.
Probably worth noting, we've crossed the 400 threshold for this distillery. 401 casks.
The highest number of bottled casks from any code in the Society nomenclature.
Well, that's a hard word to say after 5 drams. Nomenclature.
Nomenclature. Okay, I said it once right. I'm not going to try and attempt it again. All right, that was good. Very good. Cool.
Josh made a comment here about this one has a lovely fruitiness to it, and I agree. There's fruit there underneath the peat, underneath the smoke. What blows my mind with 53s, and we're going to get a bit nerdy for just a moment, but almost every single cask of 53 leaves the island of Isla, gets tankered across in tankers. It gets filled into cask on the mainland, and it gets matured on the mainland. And yet, in spite of that, how often do we taste a 53 and go, "Oh, I get maritime notes"? You bring up the seaweed washed up on the beach,
oyster notes, like salty oysters.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like
it's
straight away.
Amazing how often we get those maritime coastal saline notes, and yet, in theory, you shouldn't get them. This is matured halfway between Edinburgh and Glasgow. And yet it gets us every time. It's just extraordinary.
Yeah, I know there's that line, like it's not a liter is, not a single cask is matured on site. I would love for them to mature like just, I don't know, put a dozen casks behind a wall somewhere just on site and see what.
I think I did a moment ago. You actually brought up the photo that shows the warehouse there.
Yeah, probably. There we go.
Yeah, so that warehouse on the left, just for people playing along at home, holds 6,000 casks, and they're all Lagavulin.
Yeah. And this photo's post-expansion as well.
Yeah.
Or second most recent expansion, I should say.
I can see it's got the roof strengthening truss there hanging over the top of the roof. That's killed the aesthetic a little bit.
And
I do apologize, folks. That's the structural engineer and me coming out.
I was literally about to say, and that concludes our Structural Engineers Conference 2023. Thank you for tuning in, folks. We're talking about roof strengtheners now.
Sorry.
No, yeah. I don't know what was killed more, the aesthetic of the distillery or the chat after that comment. But I mean, either way, it was absolute pandemonium. You can't hold on to it. But you're right. Okay, there you go. Good.
Hey, folks, can the people playing? I'd love to see some comments pop up on the screen. We may not be able to show them all, but Matt and I can both see them. What's your pick between the preceding whiskey, the 35, and this 53? Because I think they're both stunning, but it's just amazing to try the 53 now and go, wow, I think we actually possibly just topped its predecessor, which I didn't think we were going to do, to be frank. Shout out, let us know, what do you think? If you had to pick a favorite of the night, but certainly of the last two, which way are you thinking?
Andrew's being frank. I'm going to be Matt and just say that's an awesome question. If it's however not 4 or 5, then if it was 1, 2, or 3 as well, maybe that was your pick of the night. Andrew, you love doing this. You love asking what's your pick of the night.
Yeah.
So,
well, I until 4 minutes ago, I was all in favour of number 35, our fourth whiskey for the night. But having now gone to this one, it doesn't have the same complexity. It doesn't have the same richness or mouthfeel, but there's just something about it that is just amazingly tasty and beautiful.
We broke Dov. You can see here we broke him. That's good. The 50 is probably the most peated. 25 for me. I don't think we had a 25 tonight. That would have been nice to have a rose bank, but I don't think we did.
I'm assuming that's a typo and was meant to be 35.
Yeah, 35. Yeah. I'm just kidding. 52 is my favorite. There we go. Probably a 35. And Betty says the Moorish, absolutely Moorish. Yeah, that 53 is Moorish. I could pour a second dram of that very easily. 35 my pick, but close second. Yeah.
Speaking of pouring a second dram very easily, I'm about to do just that.
Of the 53, the end of it?
Of the 53. Because remember, I said I was going to leave my 35 to sit for a little bit. I've still got that here. I'm going to come back to it in just a moment.
Yeah, I still got half 53 here. I might tuck into that in a second because that was very good. Yeah. Kill the rest of that off.
And again, another whiskey that for me, I have no desire to add water. I don't think it needs it. I think if you added water, you'd be doing it as a scientific experiment rather than out of any sort of need or desire.
Yeah.
Wow. And it develops now on that second dram, on that second pour. There's now a bit of licorice coming out, a bit of aniseed. There's still underlying it. There's still a vanilla note, a peated vanilla. You know what? I would love to make an ice cream with this. I reckon. Can you imagine an ice cream with this mixed into the batch?
Yeah. Wow.
I was lucky enough to have some Lafroig ice cream a couple of years ago. It was a beautiful vanilla ice cream with Lafroig thrown into the mix, and it was stunning.
Did you get much of a Lafroig note in the ice cream?
I didn't taste the ice cream and go, wow, this is Distillery 29. But I did go, wow, this is an amazing peaty, smoky ice cream. And it was genuinely an enjoyable experience as opposed to an interesting experience or, hey, this is amazing. Who'd have thought peated whiskey and ice cream would go together well? It was genuinely a, wow, my taste buds are enjoying this. This is incredible. And I can only imagine that this would lift the bar even higher.
Yeah. I'm always, just as a general comment, I'm always very skeptical of those you know what I call it? The whiskey flavored coffee beans and whiskey flavored ice cream and stuff. It's like, I'm not getting any of that flavor in them. I find it's always very sort of nuanced, if at all.
That's Paul, who's just popped up with a comment there with about thyme and licorice and yeah. And herb. I agree, Paul. Great to catch up with you, Paul, the other week, by the way.
Yeah, legendary, man. Good to see you, Paul.
And Dave Brooks made the comment about a whiskey sour. Yeah, I can imagine this would be an amazing whiskey sour.
Oh, yeah.
I'm having a seniors moment. Please forgive me. Who's our good friend and colleague over in Perth who's always got the red hat on, the big red hat? Sam. He is a big fan and a big man who knows his whiskey sours. I would love to send a half a bottle of this to him and let him work his magic with his whiskey sours.
Yeah, good idea.
Mr. Dunn. It's Sam Dunn, isn't it?
Sam Dunn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Cool. Well, thank you, folks. Thanks to everyone who was tuning in, who was joining in the stream, who was tasting along with us as we talked a bit of nonsense, talked a bit of fun, and enjoyed a few flavors.
Matt, I know you're trying to wrap there. Forgive me for jumping in. I've just gone back to my 35 that's been sitting there now, and I'm getting extraordinary notes of butterscotch.
It's one of the better 35 cents.
Wonderful butterscotch caramel notes, sticky date pudding, and dates, dried fruits. That's what you want from sherry maturation. Amazing. Oh, who's our colleague from the Brisbane whiskey scene?
Mr. Mark Modra, good to see you, mate, from Brisbane whiskey scene. Thanks, Mark. Really appreciate it. And I'll do it at Terrarium if they get a bottle of 35. Just tell Xander to get one in. He knows how to get in touch. That's okay. Just tell him you want to see it on the bar, and he'll get in touch. In fact, if Dave or Xander Stucken, if you're watching, if you see this later, get a bottle of that 35. You want to.
What's the image you brought up on the left-hand side there, Matt?
That was going to be just something I was going to touch on briefly, but it's the next iteration of the of Kalila that's being built at the moment. So they're building this whole new visitor center at the moment, which is going to. There's some of the artist renderers of it at the moment. It's still work in progress. So it's always changing down there.
Dave, solo ice cream spiders. I think you can leave the room. That's
No. Are you referring to the one with the anniversary bottling, Dave? That you made a sour with the solo ice cream spiders.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. Our whiskey.
Solo ice cream spider. 183, 185. I can't remember the 26.185. Solo ice cream spider. Yeah, great cask. Great cask.
My apologies. I thought you actually made an ice cream spider with solo and then added whiskey to it. But
well, why not? That's it for tonight, folks. From Andrew and I, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for buying one of the Lovers Libations packs. The March virtual will be online, of course, along with March Outturn, the first Friday coming up. And don't miss it, because this one's sold out, and these virtuals have still been really popular with members, especially those who can't get to events as easily, either geographically or otherwise. And so it's great to do these and go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
Folks, it's been an absolute pleasure drinking with you. Thank you, Matt, for putting this together. Thank you as always. We look forward to your company next month.
Indeed. Thanks, folks. See you soon.
Bye for now.